Hello and welcome to How to Level Up with Demon Hunter. So there's a few different things you can do with Demon. I've not spoken about Demon Hunter before, so we're just going to go through and say the cards we don't have. I don't like this combo with Umberwing and Satyr Overseer. I've noticed that the decks that win don't tend to be these ones. There may be a Highlander deck, but I find that this deck that I've got here is more powerful than that. So there's certainly something to be said for the Wrathscale Naga, but in general, I think the deck that we've got here is pretty solid. So this is a good card as well, Nathran Damus, and it's a bit like Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. So let's move on to the actual deck that we've got though. One of the reasons why I like this deck is this card, Immolation Aura. It's a pretty powerful card. If you combo it with Thalnos, that's going to give you 3 area effect damage and a card draw for 5 mana, which is pretty cool. There's lots of like really interesting ways to... Let's look at the initial card, like the mulligan at the beginning. So one of the things that Demon Hunter adds is the outcast mechanic, right? So in general, you're going to want it. This is like the most important outcast, right? So if you get this in your opening hand, it's probably worth keeping it, because every card you get, you've got to think eventually that card will probably end up in the outcast position, which is on the very left hand side, right? So if you have any, but basically any like card which is 3 or less mana, and then a combination of that and a Skull of Gul'dan. So for instance, like you wouldn't want Inner Demon to be on the very left, right? Because that would block your outcast position. So that's the sort of thing you need to think about, like in terms of, I would always probably keep this in the opening hand just for the fact it could be an outcast position. And similarly, if you've got like a powerful card in the left-hand slot, you don't want to keep that. But if we look at the outcast cards in general, we've got Consume Magic, and we also have Spectral Sight and Eye Beam. Obviously, Altruis is, by its nature, is an outcast thing, and then Skull of Gul'dan. So in general, like trying to keep, depending on the what you're playing against, like for instance, like a buffed up Paladin minion, you might want to have Consume Magic. Now, how do games actually go? Well, this deck, this deck I leveled up really fast to Diamond, so, and I think I can get even further than, I'm currently at Diamond 9 or something like that. So the one card change that you might have different is a lot of people have 2 Warglaives of Azzinoth, and I instead did 1, and this I quite like, 6 rush attack for 5 mana. And of course we have Kel'Thas Sunstrider. So, you know, it can be very interesting. Like I had a priest game where it was like I attacked, you just had like an attack for like 14 damage, and then that was, just, on like turn 6 or 7. And then that's kind of like, against control, I would say that's sort of like what you're thinking of. Like, often not much will happen at the beginning, and then you just do a huge attack, and then you sort of just, just do a bit more over the next few turns, and then that's it. It's like because it's a new class, it's like a different approach. One of the ways I thought of like comparing it to is like with Rogue, when you had Spectral Cutlass, or even like if you had like a Kingsbane with Leeching Poison. That's about the most similar, I would say, to it. It is slightly different, but I mean, look at this card in general. It's like it just has huge power, right? So one of the things about something like this is often you're going to want to see if you can get a combo on this with Kel'Thas. So for instance, Kel'Thas, one example would be Kel'Thas, Blur Blur, Inner Demon. So that for 7 mana, then you would get a minion on board and be able to attack the face for 8. Now, if you've got, for instance, some Chaos Strikes left or some Twin Slice left, then it's going to be putting yourself at a big advantage. And remember Outcast as well. The thing about the Outcast mechanic is that if you're just getting to that end point, or you think, if you say you've got like once, you got like, say you got both Skull of Gul'dans left in the deck, you've got 12 cards left. You could do if you get like a very low amount of cards in your hand, you can do Spectral Sight. You'll probably draw into it, and then you can go straight into Skull of Gul'dan immediately. That's the sort of, it's like, because you have to think with Outcast, you're sort of like, you're monitoring both the left and right side of the deck. The left you can sort of control over the course of the game. The right, it just depends on what cards you pick up. Now, often you're going to want to combo your Inner Demon with your Eldrazi Warblades, because this can obviously give you a huge swing back. Probably the hardest matchup for Demon Hunter is Hunter. So if they get their King Crush on the board, there are some interesting things you could do. For instance, like, imagine this: they put their King Crush on the board with the for 7. Well, I don't know. There's different ways you could do it. It depends on what you've got in the previous turn. But say they put the King Crush on the board, and we'll just say we're at turn 10 they do it. And you go to Eldrazi, Kael'thas, Blur Blur, Inner Demon. Often they already have the Eldrazi out there. So then you could do Kael'thas with, say, a Twin Slice. And the interesting thing is, right, is that even if they have damage on the board, maybe that is difficult against Hunter. I would say almost every class is easier than Hunter, just because what this doesn't do well against is when they have solid high health minions on the board from an early stage, and it just carries on like that. It's sort of like like if you've got like like turn 3 is a 3/4, turn 4 is a 5/4, or like a 4/5. It's like that sort of thing is not what this deck is really about dealing with. What it's about is clear the board, and then sometimes you can go really fast at the beginning. It depends what your main sort of removal tool though is. Blade Dance, right? So Blade Dance, remember, you can combo it with Thalnos as well, so that's pretty useful. And there was actually like, and so that is the way you're going to remove stuff. So for instance, you could, what I for instance sometimes do is, if you want to just deal with like an early board, I might sometimes grab this thing, the Soul Cleave. So I just, and I just sort of chunk out some of the board with a combination of Thalnos, Soul Cleave, and I would get the Soul Cleave from the Vulpera Scoundrel. You only get I don't know why it's like this, but you only get stuff from your own class. It's not made clear in the text, but that is basically what that does. So you can sort of chunk out some of their smaller minions, and yeah, like it's a difficult one, because you think of Demon Hunter, you just want to go face. You want to be like face Hunter. I'm obviously not Hunter, but it's sort of like there is Hunter in the name, right? But often it depends on the deck you're playing against, right? Another really interesting combo as well is do Warglaives of Azzinoth with a Blur. If you have a powerful one, with a Twin Slice, you can literally just chunk out their whole board and not take any damage. That's probably the most useful way you'll end up using Blur. Consume Magic, often you would taunt, so maybe some of those the Galakrond taunt minion would be quite useful. Chaos Strike can sometimes play it early if you need to. It depends if you just sort of if you've got a good hand for sort of just chunking them down. It is really like that. But remember, you can get 16 damage easily, right? I mean, if you do something, well, it's not easily to get 16 damage, but it is possible, right? With Kael'thas, if you have enough, Twin Slice, in a Demon, Blur Blur in a Demon, that'd be 16, right? And I'm talking about the same turn, right? So it's the one class at the moment where it can really do that amount of damage. Most classes, the way that it is at the moment, is a lot of the classes can't really do that much damage. And of course this, I mean, you can also get this from Volpira. And Lifesteal as well. Like, Altruis, you're not going to necessarily get that much utility from it, but you want to get some, right? You want to. I think probably on average you get like 2 to 3 damage to all enemies, which is pretty solid. And if you get the opportunity, like, to draw cards early in the game, like if you're turn 4 or 5, this is always, I would say, this is always a priority to do it. But like most things, if you can't, I always think, even if you can't get the ideal effect from it, like in turn 8 or 9, if you've got quite a stacked hand, I normally would just take a card, even if you can't get the full effect from it. And I-beam, there's always a good, good uses for that. And yeah, Metamorphosis just comes with it. It's just very nice to have, especially the turn after you play it, when you've got full mana and it's just a deal 5 damage for 1. That's really when you can really go for it. But yeah, in general, you want to be able to get this. This weapon is the one that you want to get buffed. One of the reasons why, when I put in Commander Illidari instead of, I basically had to choose something to replace it, like a weapon. I only had 1 Warglaves, but I still think I wouldn't, if I had a choice of replacing a Warglaves or an Eldrazi, I would always replace the Warglaves, just because the lifesteal is so, it can be very important, like later game. And that, I think that's what I've basically talked about every card there. So yeah, thanks for watching.